Perspectives, different views, one voice.
Welcome to the LDN Perspective podcast. My name is Kojo and I'm with my co-host
Mo, Ali.
And our topic for this podcast is around the whole election that happened in December. So the actual title of this conversation is I Am Black and This Is Why I Voted Tory. I guess we just wanted to delve a bit more into the whole if there is some sort of black vote in the UK or how black people have been voting historically in a while, and understand the thought process of someone that might have voted Tory, even though the whole family might have voted maybe Labour in previous years or whatever. No, I guess that's that capture. What we agreed to discuss, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go around. It will be interesting to know how people voted. Ali, how did you vote?
I voted for Labour Party. Unfortunately, they didn't go further, but yeah.
And why did you vote Labour?
Well, from my upbringing, and I think I'm going to go way back. From my upbringing, I've always believed that Labour is for the working class community and also has done a lot for not only my family, but for the community as well. So I believe it's a strong party, but obviously they need to, as individuals or in a party themselves, they need to structure themselves and get there further. And obviously the Windwash is also part of the Labour. This is where they all started to allow working class and poor members of families and friends and individuals to able to get where they need to get to. So yeah, that's why I believe I wanted to vote for Labour.
Mo, yourself? How did you vote?
Yeah, for me, I intentionally abstained from voting, so I didn't vote at all. I can definitely go into that on another day possibly, but the main two reasons why I didn't vote was, one, I personally don't believe in the current voting system. It's heavily flawed and isn't as democratic as it may perceive to be. And the other one is I don't feel there was any party or individuals in particular that I felt represented or interests that I had.
Yeah, I guess for myself, I did vote. And I voted Labour. Labour because I really like Jeremy Corbyn, even though by popular belief a lot of people don't. One of the main reasons is because I feel like he says what's right, even against the grind, where everyone will be, oh yeah, let's do this, let's do that. I feel like he's the only leader that will actually say, I guess he shares a lot of my viewpoints of how I see the world. If something is bad, he says it how it is, even though he'll get a lot of backlash. He doesn't try to appease everybody. So I like Labour. Plus some of the stuff that Ali mentioned regarding historically how the people that Labour Party have represented, especially working class, and bringing some sort of equality. So that's how I voted, really. But then I guess going into this conversation, this came off article in Huffington Post, now it's called HuffPost anyway, and by the author is Diana Young. This is something that one of our friends on the podcast shared with us, and Diana Young went into her reasons for voting Conservatives, even though she is black. I guess she delves into it by talking about her family, how her family have voted in the past, and how she felt like even though her family has voted that way in the past, she doesn't have to necessarily vote that way because her circumstances have kind of changed, which kind of brought this whole quite interesting conversation around the benefit that one might get at a certain period in their life and how one might change their viewpoints, especially when it comes to the political kind of scene.
Yeah.
And I guess the question for that is that should be fair. Why shouldn't a black person vote for the Conservatives?
I mean, one thing I do want to clarify fundamentally is in terms of voting, it is your own personal choice and there's nothing wrong with who you vote for. The concern may necessarily be the reasons why you might go a certain way. And in relation to the particular article, the lady mentions lots of reasons that she felt benefited her personally. And I feel a vote is a personal activity to do. So when you are voting, it is a personal choice. So I get that completely. I mean, one thing I may be concerned about in the article is they never actually clarify exactly those particular reasons or policies that made them more inclined to go for Conservatives, which I don't know if it was intentional or not, but that might be a bit confusing in that aspect. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the Conservative as a party in general, I reckon that, how do I put this? Politics is such a funny thing because I personally don't think it is on the surface directed at particular races. As Ali mentioned, it is more in terms of the social class issues. And unfortunately, you may find that black people are more in the lower class than in the upper wealthier class.
There. That's why a lot of black people might vote for a certain party.
Yeah, and I get that.
So even though I agree with your statement.
I get the voting behaviour, but in terms of identifying the party as against a particular race, that is what I personally don't think is necessarily the case on the surface side.
It's class.
I want to tap into that because primarily my belief, and maybe for the listeners, majority of them out there, they might agree to me to an extent, conservative is mainly for the rich and is for the right, the far right. What I meant by the far right is conservative is a party that only cares for the rich and the rich gets richer, and only cares for care less for the minority that don't even can be bothered, cannot bring up or uplift themselves, like the poor. They're not concerned about that. And the reason why I mentioned they only care about the white folks, because if you look into the history of the pattern as conservative, it's always been working class, wealthy, rich, white men, or the background, and also those people, the government, or the prime minister has been in conservative. They've always come from a good family, like they been educated well. They've gone through all the system, and it is through a chain. And I might be wrong in some point, but for my understanding of what I'm growing up, and I've been seeing how the movement is, and from prime minister to prime minister, and to prime minister to prime minister, to now to Boris Johnson, and all of the way of the speech, the way of the ideas, the way he just brings up onto the table. Boris Johnson remind me of, like, for example, Donald Trump. So I just want to tap into that. But the rules, all of the character of what conservative is all about, and all of the power and all of their propaganda whatsoever, is all for them. And for us as a working class, there's no way there's no way for us as a working class to able to get up there, because working class are the main people are getting hits all the time when it comes to conservative. They're getting hits and hits. The reason why I say they're getting hits, majority of the time, working class is between between 60, 70 or 80K annual, whatever. They, for example, they get the pressure of the tax, they get the pressure of everything. They don't get supported enough. As soon as you are you're earning annual about 100K or 200K, you get supported more. So the statistic has shown that conservative is literally not for the working class or for the poor. It's always for the rich. For example, Google are receiving like £1 billion, making £1 billion in a year. Why are they even in United Kingdom? Why are they even, what's the word? Why are they paying a tax of 5% or making a deal with the government 5%? That's how you know that they're not just for the working class or the poor. They're just for the rich and for the rich. And I'm not disputing that. If they are for the rich and they are for the white, but at least give an opportunity in the spectrum. That's what I understand. Yeah.
I think just on some of the stuff that Ali mentioned, and I guess some of what salary bracket, because then when you go into conservatives, and the reason why a lot of people that might have been voted Labour in the past now voted Conservatives, there's a few reasons from some of the research I've kind of done. Some of it was to do with the actual Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn. Some of it was to do with the actual manifesto regarding how much poorer the country is going to be if Labour want to pay for all these kind of things that I guess some of it was free Wi-Fi, the NHS and all these kind of things. People felt quite particular about it. But I guess the main agenda for the whole election results also was to do with Brexit, because people felt like Labour didn't have a stance on where they wanted to be in Brexit. So, for instance, you might have had someone that voted to leave, but would vote Labour. If you get what I mean, they voted to leave Brexit, but they're a Labour supporter. But because Labour didn't have a stance, or they didn't believe Labour had a stance on what they wanted to do for Brexit, they then voted for Conservatives in order to get Brexit done, as they say, which was part of the Conservative rhetoric in advertisement and all that kind of stuff. So just going back to some of these things that, to this particular article, the key thing that, and I guess the question I asked were, you mentioned that because you're working class is the reason why you're voting for Labour, right? Am I correct in assuming that?
Not to extent, but partially, yeah.
Partially, because you feel like a lot of the stuff that the Conservative Party are going to do is going to affect you directly, right?
Well, it does, yeah.
Okay. So then what would then make someone that feels like they are middle class, and a lot of the stuff that the Labour Party is going to do is going to affect them more? So, for instance, some of the stuff that Labour were thinking of doing was imposing more tax on someone that's earning more than 80,000 pounds. Now, obviously, like, someone that is earning more than that should be thinking what political party I'm voting for, because I'm going to be taking less money home.
Yeah.
So, obviously, for the stuff that Mo touched on, it does become more of my circumstance now, thinking of myself, what is beneficial for me, looking at the manifesto and looking at different parties. So I guess from that standpoint, why would I want the Labour Party to be in power, even if I'm black?
Well, then that's the reason why probably they messed up in that kind of aspect of it, because of the rules, the agenda of what they wanted to put. But what I was saying in general, as conservative, as a party leader, they are not for the middle class or the poor. They are for just the rich. That's what they are motto for in general. That's what I was trying to tap into as a conservative. Because as what Mel just addressed, that it's your choice of voting. Yes, it is your choice of voting. But what we need to understand, we need to go way back of when all this party was created, what was the reason why behind it, and what it is till now, why we are moving, what we're moving towards it now. That's what we need to understand, because Labour was created since the 1800s, right? So since then, from an Australia party in a region, so since then, moving towards then and moving towards now, they had their understanding what they stand for, what their agenda was, and maybe now they are losing that, I believe, or maybe that's the reason why a lot of people are not supporting Labour as what you tap into. A lot of people don't like Jeremy Corbyn because of what he believes and what he stands for, and because of that, obviously you're going to get some people going to go way right wing because of that. And personally, yes, we are moving forward. Parties are moving forward. Everything is moving forward. But what we need to understand is we need to understand what we believe and what we're going to stand for and move forward and make it better, because what's happening now with all these parties is not affecting us. It's going to affect our children, our generation. That's what's going to happen. and it's unfair, you know.
Okay. Do you want to come in before? So, I guess reading this article, one thing that became quite apparent, and conversations I've been having with my friends in the past, is this whole idea of. So it touches back on some of the stuff that Ali's saying. So you look at the Labour Party. Now, we are saying that it's not necessarily race-orientated, but it's more to do with, it's class-orientated.
Yeah.
And then you find that you have a lot more people from the BAME background that will be working class.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at historically, they will vote Labour because Labour believes in equality, more even playing field, right?
Yeah.
And we do understand that the world that be, like, if I am rich, why would I want an even playing field? Why would I want to be paying more taxes? So, of course, it's not in their own thing. But then I guess even for those people that are working class, who benefited from this Labour policies, so even from this article, the author, Diana Young, benefited from Labour policies when she was younger, because the family, at that time when Labour was in governance, a lot of the policies or a lot of the things that were in place benefited her in order for her to propel to the position that she's
Where she
in,
now,
right?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting that as you are working class and you move middle class, then if you're just looking at you and where you are now, you might change your voting depending on where you are now. But then should we not also be looking back to understand how we got there in the first place?
I think that's
I
selfishness.
guess looking at this article, that's the question I'll ask, right? And that's the conversations I have with my friends who, I guess, are moving more towards the middle classes. So they're more looking at manifesto and looking at what's written in there to see how do they benefit from that. But should we not be looking back as to how you got there in the first place? Is that not a fair thing?
Yeah, no, I think I definitely relate in a lot of what you just kind of brought up in that aspect. I think what you might find is when someone is voting personally, there is the element of selfishness and literally how do I personally benefit and how does this personally benefit me? And then there's the other aspect of, you know what, how does this benefit my social group or my people or my generation coming? Not even necessarily generation now.
So
it could also be generation coming.
Yeah, so then I guess, I should just quickly so one is you, one is the community or your social background.
Yeah.
The third one could be like future generations, as I
yeah.
mentioned.
Yeah. And so you might get people when voting, they take into consideration those elements of your community or your future generations. And then there's some that totally disregard that completely and just personally think about their own personal immediate benefit and how they can move forward. If I'm honest with you, that is the kind of sense I got from reading that article from that individual, is that she's more looking in terms of her personal immediate benefit and not necessarily thinking about her community or future generation or even past generation. But then, is that her choice? Is it up to her? Not everyone has to think about their community or think about their future generations or whatever. I mean, I might personally take those things into consideration, but it'll be very naive of me to think that everybody does.
But that's quite dangerous, though.
It's dangerous in what sense?
Because as what code you just tap into, for you to get where you need to get into, you have to go through elements, you have to go through holders and whatsoever to get where you are. At one point, it was benefiting her family, because where she is now, she just not regarding that anymore. Is obviously is now. So she's in that environment where she's more comfortable and more settled, right? So there's going to be a time where she's going to need back where she was going, where she came from, because there's always a time where you have to go back again to remembering where you first started, because it might be all good or smooth, but at one point it's going to trap you again. And when it traps you again, you probably have to reconsider again, or how did I get here? And then you need support. But then would that support, would it give it to her at that moment because she has voted for that specific party? Would that party help her out? Would that party help her out now? Do you understand? Because there's one thing of, of voting for conservative or Tories. But when it comes to trouble or support, would they support? Would they give her that support?
Yeah, so I totally get what you're saying, but you're literally thinking of it on the element where she's considering future things or whatever. She clearly says what benefits her now at this present time. Yes, she could get in trouble later. It's one of them ones, well, we'll deal with that when it comes.
That's what I meant.
I'll change my votes.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
And that is dangerous. That's why I use that word, is it not danger?
Yeah, it is.
Because this is what we humans, we're so in our mind zone of our own selfishness.
Yeah.
You understand? And that's a worrying thing, because we move so fast nowadays that we're not thinking what benefit us now. That's what is important.
Yeah.
We don't care about tomorrow. We don't care about the next day. We only care about today. And that is a fact that we need to stop. Yeah, what I'm saying, if it benefit us now, which is fine, I'm not disputing that, but the whole point of human race or life or whatever you do, what decision you make now is going to affect you in the longer run. And we need to understand that whatever decision you make now, yes, it's fine, it's happy, but remember for tomorrow. That's what I just think, because at the end of the day, she's got family, she's got children, or she's got a home, and that home all depends on her and for her children or for her family. That's what I think. And it might not be her children is going to be affected, but it will be like her community, her circle that might be affected.
She doesn't care.
But then,
And I think, okay, so yeah. So
I think we really need to highlight it's a selfish vote, and the concerns you might have of other elements are clearly portrayed in the article that it's not a concern to her.
Yeah, so one thing that I've put down is that her choice, in regarding past generation, future generation, and my current situation. That's why I made that vote. And I think the interesting part, and I guess for me, I've always believed in this collective thinking. Even when you listen to Dr. Umar Johnson, I think the last time that he went on the Breakfast Club, what he mentioned was, and this was just doing in America, where people were like, oh, what party should they vote for? What party should black people vote for? And I guess his standpoint was more looking at it as more from a black vote. And I guess when you're looking at it from a black vote, it's more of policies that will benefit black people, right? Yeah. And I guess when you're looking at policies that will benefit black people, then it's almost like you have to come together as a collective to really approach these political parties to have those kind of conversations. Yeah. But then even in that sphere of that whole black vote and coming together, there will be people that will be penalized more than others. Because in the sense of a black vote, you might have people in there that are upper class, middle class, or working class. Now, all these political parties are not going to serve all their interests. No. Right? So it's the whole understanding of, because of how we named this article, we're talking about black people, then it's the whole understanding of that black collective thinking, right? And I guess what I wanted to go into now is that you have this idea of where I am now, right? But then you also look up in the past and you look at some of these political parties and you look at things that they've been associated with. A lot of it is you got the Windrush generation. You also have a leader who has made racist remarks. He's made sexist remarks. Exactly. He's done all these kind of things, right? So if I am black and I'm voting, I know that I'm not just voting for... You're not just voting for conservatives. You're also voting for the leader that represents the conservatives, right? Yeah. So obviously, in the big sphere of things, and it does handle, the article does talk about that, you could ignore that. You could ignore what conservatives have stood for. You could ignore things that they've done that's actually affected your generation. And then it goes back to this whole black people don't stick together. This is where I wanted to get this to, right? Because we always sit down and say, black people don't stick together, black people don't do this. But then when we're saying that, we never actually say, oh, but have you looked at that person's circumstance as to why they've made that specific decision, right? We never give it that clout. But then when it comes to politics and we're talking about why people are voting a certain way, we want to start talking about, but is it not her choice? Yeah. And I guess in anything, whether it's the black movement, Pan-Africanism, whatever it is people do have that individual choice to choose or do whatever that they want to do. But if we're talking about for black benefit, then is it not more of thinking more of how does that affect the working class? And as I said, it's a class thing, but we know that there will be more black people in that bracket of working class or poor or whatever, not because of the country that we're in, kind of thing, because of how things are. So do people not have to think about this? Because for me, it's very difficult for you on one hand to say black people don't stick together and then do something that you know is going to affect more black people, but for you right now, it's okay for you. That's why I think what Ali was saying, I think that that is dangerous in that aspect of things, because we start being more selfish for our own benefit. And if everyone is going to live this life to say, okay, I benefited from these policies, but look at me and my nuclear family now, this is beneficial for me. I know my brothers are suffering. I know my mum is suffering. I know my grand... Do you know what I mean? So even though it's beneficial for me now, these policies could help me, but then it's dragging them down, which is dragging me down, because then we go back into this whole idea of the black tax, which is like episode 19. Because in the black tax, we do mention that even though you personally, you are growing, you're earning more, you still have people that, whether it's a burden or responsibility. So the people that might see as a responsibility, you could say I'm voting Conservatives, right? Because of all this tax bracket doesn't affect me. But then if there are other things that affect your family background and you have this burden or responsibility of helping them out, then in effect, your black tax level is going up as well, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? So should we not start thinking more as a collective rather than this individualized way of thinking, which we know in the bigger scheme of things does not do us any good?
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying, and I reckon definitely voting selfishly is dangerous in terms of as a community aspect and progression aspect. You're never really going to progress if everyone is voting selfishly. In terms of the whole race side of things and how you associated that with the Conservative Party, like let's say Boris Johnson has made racist comments, and
yes, I could dig up on some stuff that he said, but
and has been seen racist. I just want to tell people, don't be illuded to think that just because there'll be another Conservative leader that they wouldn't be racist too. Do you get what I mean?
Well, that was the reason why I said conservative is for
what
white.
the party, I guess Ali was saying what the party actually stands for.
Yeah.
So regardless of who is
who
the
is,
leader,
yeah.
what the party actually stands for
Yeah.
is what Ali was trying to touch on.
But then I in terms of the black voting mentality, I don't really feel Labour benefits black people in general.
Maybe
personally.
now. Maybe it's now.
I don't
now.
think so. I don't think they really have actually even showed concrete
Why do you
evidence
say that?
of them supporting black people in general. Tony Blair, he was leader of Labour Party. I feel in Tony Blair's whole reign period, did black people specifically benefit?
Not to a degree.
I don't think so, no. But I'm assuming a lot of black people voted for Labour.
Yeah.
But benefit in what way? Because if we're going to, which is a fair thing to go into, because if we're going to talk about the actual real benefit that a certain group of people might get, then we need to actually give it the same clarity. What are we talking about here? Because under the Labour Party, NHS...
Is that the manifesto?
NHS was not being privatised. No. So the NHS privatisation mainly is coming because the Conservative want to kind of break it down and stuff. So when we're looking at policies and we're looking at governance and we're seeing what type of people it benefits, the key thing is that if NHS is privatised, it's not going to benefit working class people.
No.
Yeah.
It's not, right? So when we're saying about, and this is why I framed it to say a class thing. I definitely believe it's a class thing. It's not a race thing. However, the point that I made is that when you're looking at the class breakdown in this country, you're going to have more black people that are in a certain class bracket, which is the working class, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to have that, and we know that Labour Party, in regards to their policies or manifesto, and we're delving down to what they've stood for in the past, we know that they believe more in equality and making it more of an even playing field. Yeah, and I guess making it more of an even playing field, people could be like...
So just to comment on that, I think Liberal Democrats demonstrate more policies of equality than Labour do.
Even though that could be the case,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with that, because Liberal Democrats had their chance and they blew it in the coalition. Because if they believed and demonstrated more when they were in the coalition, they didn't show that. They didn't. The key thing when you read a lot of stuff why Liberal Democrats actually lost more voters was to do with the whole tuition fee and bringing down the tuition fee, which they were part of the government that actually increased the tuition fee.
Yeah,
so fair enough that Liberal Democrats might have more policies that actually could be more beneficial for the working class. But then I guess
more equality.
more equality based.
Yeah.
But then I guess where I was going with that is to say that when we are saying did Labour really benefit working class people, I would say yes, because of some of these things that I've kind of said. Because when you have people that even work in the NHS and they're telling you how the NHS bit by bit is being privatised, people don't see the effect now. But in a couple of years' time, people will actually see what that actually means. So I guess when we're saying that and putting it in that bracket of classes, is some of the policies that you could actually say to say that, look, okay, if Labour is more thinking about working class and you have more black people in that bracket, then whatever that they're doing benefit more black people. So black people need to think about how they vote for what party.
I agree, yeah. I agree. But you tap into something what was quite relevant when you was talking about the selfishness, the quite dangerous part of it, when you was mentioning that, if you give an example, if you are voting, and then what about your family and whatsoever? You mentioned, because that kind of phrases is kind of what we spoke about the slavery. You had the slavery that they are the one that is outside, are doing all the hard work, and then you've got the one that in-house that they think they're better than the one that is in the field. You remember that storyline, Coach? I think you picked it up.
Basically, using that same kind of template, you're basically saying, look, I used to be on the field.
Yeah.
A lot of these things don't affect me anymore. I'm in the house, so why would I? That's basically what you're saying,
Yes.
because my circumstances have changed.
Yes.
Even though I am a nigger,
Yes.
I'm in the house now. So I'm
That's
a house nigger.
Yeah.
So I need to do things that benefit me now, and I'm the house nigger. Even though I know that the people in the field are suffering,
Yeah.
it's about me now.
That's it.
Right? So you can use that to kind of support this whole idea of their voting pattern and stuff like that.
No, because I want to follow on that. What if you get the individual whereby they are a prominent business person in the black community, they're doing really well, they employ black businesses, they pay and use suppliers that are from black-owned businesses, and they voted Conservative because the Conservative policies help them improve their business, make more profit, and in which they are directly using that income to benefit the black community, get more jobs in, do stuff like that, whatever. Would you then condemn that person for voting Conservative?
So that's a fair point, and it's a fair example in a sense of policies that are being made to benefit people in this certain social class. So on one hand, it's easy to just talk about Conservatives, just look at middle and upper classes, and that's what they make policies to benefit them. But then on the other hand as well, those same policies could then mean that a working class person will get a job because that example that you're making, right? So yeah, it is a fair example to throw into this conversation in that sense, because then when we qualify the person that owned the business to be black and they vote a Conservative, then it's not necessarily. So that's the thing. It's not a race thing. It's more of a class thing. The question will be, how many black people do you know that have businesses like that?
That's what I want to tap into.
Not like there isn't, but there'll be way more white people
are doing that
of different background that have that than black people.
That's
if you get what I mean. And even in the cases where black people have businesses like that, it's very hard to see that supply chain being black like that. So it is a fair thing to say, but yeah, I guess that's the only other thing that I'll just add to that. So I hope I answered your
Yeah.
answered the question. I guess so. When Lilia shared this on the platform, one of the things that she mentioned, obviously, she mentioned that Diana Young is selfish, and that's why she's made this kind of vote. And I think there was some conversation around whether she just voted, because I think in the article she tried to insinuate that she voted for the Conservative Party but not Boris
Johnson.
Like trying to take Boris Johnson out of the equation.
Yeah.
And it was kind of Lilia kind of made a point to say it's one of the same thing because Boris Johnson.
Yeah, but you said that.
I disagree with that.
Okay, and why do you disagree with that?
Mainly to very other conversations that we've had in terms of Africa and stuff, whereby even if you cut the head off the snake, then the machine behind it will still be running in terms of the Conservative Party. Boris Johnson is not the Conservative Party.
He's the leader of the Conservative Party.
So you had David Cameron before, yeah? Was he racist? Was he a bad guy?
I wouldn't know because he never
I
said
think
it.
he is.
He never said it.
He never said it.
No, but
So.
But my thing is, him and Boris Johnson, both were Oxford graduates.
They both went to Eton.
Yeah?
Yeah.
They're both Oxford graduates. They're both part of the same circle of people.
Yes.
They're both part of the Bullingdon Club.
Yeah.
These are people with like-minded upbringing and social beliefs. So it is very much likely that someone like Cameron or Boris Johnson or George, the other Chancellor, have similar views or mindsets or beliefs in that sense. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, you might feel strongly about Boris because he's actually said what he thinks and what he feels. And because of that, you condemn him and thinking that that because of him, if, let's say, he wasn't in the picture, then the Conservatives might not look so bad or whatever. Or
you've literally answered the question there.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're saying that Boris Johnson belongs to this eating group, in regards to this whole Boris Johnson
kind of
and disassociating itself from Conservative, you've answered the question there. Because if Boris Johnson, if they all belong to the same club, they went to Eton, they share the same, you believe that it's most likely that they share the same beliefs or viewpoints or whatever not, then it means that Boris Johnson, and you do the comparison with David Cameron, so it doesn't mean to say that David Cameron is not as racist as Boris Johnson. It could mean that they are that racist, it's just that David Cameron never actually came out to say it.
Yeah.
But the problem you have as a black person is that if you know that this person is saying racist things, and they belong to the same club, which is the representative of the Conservative Party, which then means, by your explanation, that most of that party is going to be racist, then why vote for the Conservative Party?
In the first place,
then it means you cannot detach Boris Johnson from the Conservatives because it's one of the same things.
Yeah, I agree. I understand.
Yeah, so you've literally answered my thing for me, what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
And that's the point that Lilia was trying to make. To say that, writing an article to say that, you're disassociating Boris Johnson from the Conservative, and that's why you're voting Conservative, makes no sense because Boris Johnson represents the party. So if you're talking about, it's viewpoints that might not be shared by everyone, but yet if we delve into some of the stuff that you mentioned, then it kind of makes sense to think that if he is saying that and the party are not so opposed to it, then clearly it's a viewpoint that a lot of them share. So why would you kind of... So that's the point that I wanted to...
So what I was more answering in relation to that is that
you can't dig yourself out of this.
No. Yeah, yes, he has those viewpoints and whatever. But if you're someone that is choosing to ignore that fact and focus purely on the policies and how you can benefit from it, then I get that in that stance. As in, let's say you've got a room full of murderers. They're all murderers. It doesn't matter who you pick or whatever, but which one benefits me the most in that aspect. So in regards to Labour, most of their leaders are from that very same background as Boris as whatever. So I would feel it's naive then in that case if we're following on by what I just said earlier, to think that they also don't have the same
No, but
beliefs
it's not
or
naive.
follow the same thing.
It's not naive because they've chose to be with the Labour Party.
Yeah.
And we know what both parties, everyone to a certain extent, know that Labour is more left and Conservative is more right in regards to viewpoints, whether softer or harder or whatever way you want to think. So even though I went to class with you, even though we came from the same background, that's not mean we're going to have the same viewpoint.
That's it.
And I've made that decision to say that we don't have the same viewpoint. This is why I'm Labour.
Yeah.
And I could have the same viewpoint as a lot of people that are more on the hardliner. That's why I voted. That's why I'm with Conservative. So I understand that.
Yeah.
But I think that the distinction comes with the party that they now
Belong
are
to.
part of.
Yeah. I know what I would like to.
Yeah. I know you still want to go on this, but it's not.
No, but what I would like to.
I just think that the whole racist side of it is different from the socialist aspect.
No, but then no one is saying. I guess the
Because you
point,
can get
the
racist
point-
socialists.
No, I think you can get that. But the point that this lady was trying to make in the article, we're just talking about the point of disassociating Boris Johnson with the Conservatives and some of the things that Boris Johnson have said that are racist, right? So if you're saying that, okay, I'm just voting for the Conservatives because of some of the policies, just know that you are voting. And if we go with the whole explanation that you've given from a viewpoint, collectively thinking of the same thing, viewpoint and being together, and this is what Boris Johnson is, then if Boris Johnson is saying this and there's not much backlash from the Conservative Party, then it can't be assumed that the party is racist. So you know that, yes, if these policies benefit you, but you're still voting for a so-called or racist party. It's all we're trying to say here. Yeah?
I don't get it, but why? What my question is, why think like that? Why think like that? Why you wanna? Because you've made it and you don't care about whatever is behind you whatsoever. Why is that?
But I
don't think she's intentionally trying to put down black people.
No, what I'm saying
I think
is
people are losing that aspect.
people are
from
losing
reading it.
But then I think you have to think like that, though. Why would you not consider these things? I think it's a question that everyone have to ask themselves. If I am earning 80 grand and Labour's going to come in and I'll be having less money going into... So you have people that are saying, just based on why someone will say that, yeah. Let me just get some stuff here.
I know she has her own business, right? She's a consultant or what? A PR? She's a PR something, a consultant. Is she bringing anything into the community?
That I don't know. Those are things that
we don't know.
What I'm saying here is that I'm not here to judge her decision.
No,
I'm more
I'm not
here
saying that.
to talk about that article because I know there's a lot of black people that
Yeah,
are
the
thinking
reason
that
why I
way.
tap into
So
it.
I don't have to necessarily see what she's been doing for the black community to then say, okay, it's fine for her to be voting Conservative, if you get what I mean. Because this conversation is not to look at her and judge her for a thing. It's just to look at this idea of why one will vote for one party or the other based on historical or what the parties actually represent and what policies or manifesto.
I think it's mainly the manifesto.
What I'm trying to
mainly
look at.
why she probably voted for the manifesto, to be frank.
Yeah. So in regards to this thing, you had someone saying that my dad earns 80,000, my mum just earns 15,000, but they say they won't call themselves working middle class or anything because their dad is a manual worker, scaffolder, and the mum works in like a supermarket or whatever. No, so she's saying from her perspective, if Labour comes in and introduce this kind of tax bracket, it's going to affect
the family.
her dad, and it's going to affect the money that's actually coming into the household, right? Because I guess those sums, this is why I was going to ask the question about how much do you have to earn in order to fit into a certain bracket of middle class or whatever that's meant to mean. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's 60. Yeah. No, 46, above 47 something, you are...
So from her standpoint, and this is a student, because they did a thing where they went around to universities asking students how they voted and stuff. And this is what one of them said. And I think it's fair regardless. Why would you not say that? Why would that individual not really think about their circumstance as well, right? So, yes, I'm here saying about this whole collective kind of thinking. But then I think it's also fair for someone to actually think of their circumstance and make a decision one way,
especially if it's
or
a
the
heavy
other.
impact on their direct circumstance.
Exactly. So that's the thing where we can't lose that, and we can't be that judgmental to say, oh, you do this because you don't support black people or you're racist or you're anything like that. Because sometimes it's just to do with me right now, my family, and what affects us, rather than me looking at any bigger picture. They're not looking at that bigger picture, if you get what I mean.
But what if she's still aware of the leader being racist and the party notoriously not necessarily supporting black people?
Yeah, it seems that she's aware, because from her article she explains it.
Yeah.
So she's aware of that, but she's saying, I don't fit into that bracket anymore. But then I guess from the same conversation, though, are we saying that you are not allowed to switch political alliance? Because your family might have benefited 100 years ago, and it's the reason why you are in this position. Maybe for your next generation to benefit, you might need to switch political alliances.
No, I agree. You have to.
So
You have to.
where do we go with this? You can't say... So there's... Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Last thoughts.
For me, this whole of Diana Young voting for the Tory is 50-50 in my side of it, because I was saying at one point, she's prejudiced and so on, why she's not thinking about the community. However, looking deep into it and breaking it down with the working class, the lower end middle class and the higher middle class, if I'm in that position where I'm comfortable, where I'm earning about 85 plus, and I'm getting a party where parties bringing a manifesto that's going to hit me, it's going to hit me very hard, I would reconsider it and then vote for a party that's going to benefit me and my family. It's not to say I'm not with the community or I'm not helping the community, but it's to say is what is benefiting me from my family and what is going to be more achievable, and I'm going to be more in a position where I'm happy. So in a way, I don't want to make her feel like she's in the wrong, but I just understand that where she's doing it for her own best and for her own interest for her family. That's what I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very interesting article. The title is very capturing. I feel that definitely she has gone for a more selfish approach and just voted in her own benefit, which I think is her choice. And I accept in this world, not everybody is going to do things selflessly. And we just have to accept that. What I do have a problem with is there's no specific reasons as to what policies particularly benefit her. So the reasoning is too generalized, and you can't really get a proper picture as to what led her to that choice. And generalizing Labour and working class people in some of her comments, I think, is very negative in her mindset and how she views things, because it's not right in that sense. But I do feel that a black person can definitely vote for Conservatives, but I'll be very more interested into exactly what those reasons are exactly and what led them to that.
Yeah, I guess I echo some of the things that you guys have mentioned. As I said before, I always see this as this whole conversation. Just people need to understand, when they keep saying these whole rhetoric, black people don't stick together, these are some of the circumstances around decision-making where people could always look at themselves and say, right now this benefits me, so I don't give a damn how it affects any other black person, but it benefits me right now. But by making that decision as well, then you should never really ever come out, it should never come out your mouth to say black people don't stick together, because you know why black people don't stick together. You get what I mean? So I'm not on one hand going to say a black person should not vote with Conservatives, but I think that whatever your decision is, if you believe in collective thinking, collective benefit, especially looking at black people in general in a Western society, and looking at things that will get us out of some of the issues that we find ourselves in, then I think you need to think about the party that you associate yourself with. So maybe, as Uma Johnson mentioned, maybe what we should be thinking more is policies using more of the black vote to get things changed rather than individuals making decisions for themselves.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the LDN Perspective podcast. Please get in contact with us, and we want to create more of an organic platform. So if you have any questions, please check our Instagram page, which is LDN Perspective. You could also reach us on Twitter, Perspective LDN. And please, you could always drop us an email at ldnperspective@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
Perspectives, different views, one voice.